after that SUV was gone, and you looked out that window with that clear and good view, there was no body, was there?
I never saw a body.
Thank you.
I wish I had.
Sounds like that's a little rehearsed.
Not at all. It's not at all. I'll let the answers
Hey everybody, welcome back to Truth Revealed. I'm your host, Sergio Denaro, and today we are going to continue to take a deep dive look into the Karen Read murder trial. Today we are going to be analyzing Jennifer McCabe's statement. So a little bit about me before we get started. I'm a former human intelligence collector for the US government. I'm a retired federal agent from the Department of Homeland Security. And I want to start off this video real quick by saying thank you to my new subscribers. You guys are really helping me to get my channel off the ground. One thing I have learned from these first few videos is that my normal process, the way that I go about analyzing a statement, doesn't make for a good YouTube video. It complicates things. I'm new to creating videos on YouTube, and I'm still learning how to transition what I used to do as a job into what's interesting on a YouTube video. I was mixing my expertise, which is deception detection, with my theories about what could have potentially transpired that evening. Now, that's a normal process for me. As I'm looking at each individual statement, I'll begin to create a timeline and a potential narrative. Then what I do is I go and I look at more narratives and I create individual timelines for each one. And then when I'm done looking at everybody's narrative, I superimpose them all on top of each other. And I mark where I know the truth is, where I know deception is. I mark what the real evidence is. And I get this overlay that creates one truthful timeline of events. That process just didn't come across well in my first video. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna walk through the deception so that you know crystal clear in your mind what is truth and what is deception. And then at the end of the video, if I have an opinion on, oh, this may have happened, having not seen all the evidence, because I only look at the evidence that's pertinent to that witness, then I might throw in a section at the end and title it on the video, my opinions or, my theories of what could have happened based on this person's testimony. That will help you if you overlay all those at the end when I'm done looking at all the witness testimony, but it can confuse you, or if you've already looked at other evidence, you'll know that certain things are wrong, and I understand that. So we'll jump into this looking at Jennifer McCabe's witness testimony. I'm going to start out by telling you what I'm looking for, and then we're going to go through and analyze that. To begin this analysis, we're going to be looking for Jennifer McCabe's baseline. That means her demeanor, her linguistics, meaning her tone of voice, her cadence, her rhythm, the way she talks. We're going to get a baseline for all of that in the beginning. The way that Attorney Jackson asks questions is very good for that. I'm sure it's purposeful, because it's a lot like a polygraph exam. Once we have that baseline, I'm going to look for verbal anomalies and linguistics anomalies, as well as microexpressions and body language. When it comes to getting a baseline is a technique that's taught in polygraph. There are irrelevant questions, which are questions that everyone knows the answer to. What is your name? What's your address? Things like that are irrelevant to the case, but they help to establish that baseline. Then there are questions that are control questions. Control questions are where you get the subject to lie. You know that the subject is lying about something. So you purposefully set up questions that are going to get that type of response. You don't actually care that they're lying. So on the stand, the attorneys aren't looking to charge the witness with perjury at that point. And in a polygraph exam, you're not going to say, you're lying here, and you get to see that. You get to baseline what it looks like when a person is lying. And that is called a control question. So I'm looking for irrelevant questions in the beginning, and I'm looking for control questions. Once I see those control questions, I get some indicators of what it looks like when they're lying, and then we will use those indicators throughout the rest of the statement. And I call that a deception tag. So people like to use certain phrases. There's certain phrases that comfort people. It's a different phrase with everybody, but it always falls within that realm of deception. It's never going to be something like rainbows and unicorns, and then they lie. It's not a random word. There are different indicators of deception. Different people will choose different indicators of deception that they like to tag their deception with. So that's what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we start talking about Jen McCabe, I do want to mention that her statement is riddled with deception. It's almost deceptive from start to finish. And you don't have to be a trained observer to notice that. Her statement it's just deceptive all the way from the beginning to the end. There are some truthful statements in there, relevant truthful statements, other than the irrelevant questions in the beginning. And I will point those out. And they are far more helpful than finding the lies and the deception, because it's very clear that she's lying. She's trying to not give away certain information. If you feel like, as I'm going through this, it looks like I'm just finding any possible deception indicator and just tagging it on everything she says, it feels like, wow, anybody could say anything and you could find an indicator there. That's not the case. It really is the case that she's lying in almost everything from start to finish. Not all statements are going to look like this. Her statement is tore up, and it comes out that way. Just keep in mind that this is an extreme example where Jennifer McCabe is being cross-examined by attorney Jackson, and he is asking pertinent, difficult questions almost from start to finish, and she's lying about almost everything. So not to spoil it for you, but I just want you to be aware of that. There's a lot of indicators going through this, and we just have to use this as a teaching tool. All right, that being said, let's just go ahead and jump in and get started. Jennifer McCabe on the stand. We got attorney Jackson asking questions. We're in the baseline section here where we are going to be looking for what truthful answers look like and what deceptive answers look like. So I'll be notating those. Did you say specifically, you're coming with me? No. Okay, so I'm not going through every single question here. There's a lot of one-word answers. I'm cutting through that stuff just enough to give you a good baseline of what we're looking for. Did you say specifically, you're coming with me? She says no. So in her mind, she can just definitively say no if even one word is wrong. That's an important note to make here. And then he says, you didn't say that. And she says, not exactly those words. What exactly were the words that you used? She says, I said, why don't you come with me? So you asked Karen to come with you in your car? Yes. Sure. Did you believe it was important at that point to ask Mrs. Reed to come with you, which would separate her from John O'Keefe? She says, there was never any idea of separating them. Never is always a lie. I hate to use always or never, but I've yet to see the word never not be a lie. Unless it's in a question, you can set up a question with the word never. The word never is a very, very strong indicator of deception. So I highlighted it here. And whenever we have a very strong indicator of deception, I highlight it in this teal color. So there was never any idea of separating them. I wondered, why does attorney Jackson keep asking that question? In the beginning, he keeps asking her, were you trying to separate them? Were you trying to separate them? And I had no idea where he was going with that. But this answer leads me to believe that he was asking that for a reason, because she's being deceptive about it. Then attorney Jackson says, except for the fact the idea was you're coming with me, not you two are coming with me, correct? And she says, incorrect. She has that vocal inflection that goes along with that. I highlighted this as deception because what he says here is, you're coming with me, not you two are coming with me. That is a very direct statement. The idea is that she's going to take just Miss Reed. The question doesn't even insinuate any malicious intent, but she has no problem in saying incorrect. When she says incorrect, that is an indicator of deception. It does not mean what he said is incorrect. Then he says, please answer yes or no. By definition, your statement to her, you come with me, would separate her from John. Jen McCabe says, would not, because we were all going back to Fairview Road. This is her way of being obstinate, and which is fine because, again, this is our baseline. So we're seeing what it looks like when she's trying to prove a point and she's not allowing the question to be answered directly. There's a mentality that goes along with that. That's what we're picking up on here. And this is great. This is a control question for us. This allows us to see what it looks like when she's deceptive. She uses the word never, which is common. Almost everybody does that. And she uses the word incorrect. So not everyone does that. That's sort of unique to her. Then she does that negative statement, would not, and then the explanatory statement, because. Then she says, we were all going back to Fairview Road. So that's her little rationalization of why she's lying or why she's being deceptive. Okay, but at that time, your idea is to bring Karen with you, separate and apart from John. He still has to get an answer to this question. Then she says, we were waiting. We were waiting for John to come out. And I said, why don't you just come with me? It was innocent. Now we can see implied guilt in here. Everyone knows that the defense attorney is going to try and get the witness to say something that's going to exonerate his client. What this shows us is that a witness does not want the defendant to be exonerated. You have to ask yourself, why is that? You have to keep that in mind, because a witness shouldn't have a motive. A witness should just be a witness. When a witness has a motive, that is extremely important to us. As the interrogator / investigator, we are not bound by the rules of a trial. We are bound only by common sense. When we know something and we see something, we don't ignore it. We know that there's an element of guilt and that there's a motive here. And we have a couple indicators of what it looks like when she's lying. About Mr. Higgins, on Friday, you saw his vehicle when you got to the scene, correct? Yes. And you said that it was pulled up a little bit from the front of the mailbox, correct? Yes. Then he says, that's quite a bit of detail about where that Jeep was. Would you agree? And she says, no, because. So you have a negative statement followed by an explanatory statement again. Then she says, I drove down the street and I took a left into the driveway and there was a Jeep there. She gives an explanation. And if you allow yourself to believe her explanation, then you miss the point, because she is being deceptive here by saying no. The question was, that's quite a bit of detail about where the Jeep was. And her answer is no. And then she says, essentially what she's saying is, yes, because I drove down the street, I took a left and the Jeep was right there. So she's actually saying no, when what she means is, yes, that is quite a bit of detail, but here's why. She is being confrontational and saying that everything that he's saying is wrong. And that's pertinent. We now know that we need to look at her statements with an eye for, is she simply trying to contradict? She's a contrarian. And is she simply trying to contradict everything that he says? Okay, that detail obviously stuck out in your mind. That's a rephrasing of it being a lot of detail. And then she says, it did. So now we have confirmation. This is gonna happen over and over again. She's going to lie, and I'm going to point out the indicator, and then the question is going to get rephrased, and she's going to answer it differently. And you'll get to see exactly that indicator is actually an indicator of deception for her. That detail obviously stuck out in your mind. It did, because I was wondering whose Jeep it was. And I wrote on there confirmation of the lie. So this confirms that she, in fact, lied in the question above when she said no, because here she says it did, yes. And then she says because. Now we have confirmation that when you see this neg plus explanatory statement, that's a lie. And it usually is, but we like to get that confirmation. I want to see confirmation that the indicators actually are indicators of a lie, not just indicators of sensitivity. Did you discuss that detail with your husband at any point? Not sure. Okay, so there's no I. No I is a lie. If she's not committed to what she's saying, then you should not be committed to what she's saying. So did she discuss that detail with her husband? Not sure. Aside from the fact that there's no I there, that's also a reduction of commitment. Not sure. She's not saying no. She's not saying yes. What she's saying is no comment. So he says, you're not sure? You might have. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I said whose Jeep is that. So now she's qualifying it. This is just textbook deception. First, you get this reduction in commitment, and then you get the qualifying statement afterwards. So I'm not sure if I said whose Jeep is that. You got the I here because now she's able to qualify it, and she's able to very specifically say, I didn't say whose Jeep is that, which means she might have said anything else, literally anything else other than those exact words. And you know she's a stickler for words. And then he says, no, I don't mean that. I mean, between then and now, have you and Mr. McCabe ever discussed where that Jeep was? Your memories of where that Jeep was? That's a very specific question for her. And this is still early on, and she's still having a hard time lying. So as a witness lies more and more, they become more comfortable with it. And she says, possibly. That's a very clear indicator to us that the answer is yes. He says, you're aware that he put the Jeep in the exact same place that you checked. Are you aware of that? Now I'm going to play a video clip of this because this is crazy.
You're aware that he put the Jeep in the exact same place that you did.
Are you aware of that? I am. Oh, wait, no. Oh, excuse me. Repeat the question?
You're aware that he puts the Jeep in the exact same spot you just put the Jeep, right in front of that mailbox, right?
I know he knows where the Jeep was. I'm not aware what he said in here.
This is fun to watch. He says, I am. Oh, wait, no. Oh, what? Excuse me. Repeat the question. So she gets flustered. That tells us a couple of things. So my note here is verbal linguistics indicate panic in this statement. So she accidentally answered this question truthfully, and that created a panic in her. So that means that not only has she rehearsed these statements, you'll find out later with her little group, but there is very clear direction for her to say very specific things to the point where when she slips up, she panics. So this tells us that the verbal linguistics indicate panic, which indicates collusion here, and should be remembered for the future. You're aware that he puts the Jeep in the exact same spot, right in front of that mailbox. I know he knows where the Jeep was. I'm not aware what he said in here. This is a perfect example of what I mean by a statement being rehearsed. She has very specific ways that she has rehearsed phrasing things. This is a powerful indicator that Ms. McCabe is aware of collusion and has rehearsed how to phrase sensitive areas. This is also an indicator that she is intelligent, but a very bad liar. The reason I wrote that in here, and I went back and added that later so that I would be sure to put that in the video here, because Jennifer McCabe comes off throughout her testimony here as a dummy. What she wants you to do is label her as a dummy and then disregard everything that she says because of that. But we won't do that. We are going to seek the truth here. There are statements in here from the attorney where you can tell that she is actually confused on very, very simple statements. But that happens far less than she makes it appear that it happens. She tries to act confused everywhere. On every question, no matter what, she acts like everything is confusing. But she at least has a good memory. She is good at repeating rehearsed statements. I will start to highlight when she phrases something exactly the same way at numerous points throughout the statement. That's clearly rehearsed because she says it exactly the same way every time. And then there's other places I'm going to show you where when she makes a mistake, she'll start to talk under her voice and she'll start to repeat to herself what the rehearsed way of saying it was. So it's almost like watching a child on the stand, because the way that she thinks out loud or repeats things to herself makes it very clear. It makes our job very easy. All right, so when I say she's intelligent, I mean she's more intelligent than she makes herself appear throughout this. I just want you to keep that in mind. Does he know where the Jeep was? Because you told him what to say about the Jeep. And she says, absolutely not. Saying a positive affirmation to that question before you say a negative statement makes it much easier, because it's like you're tricking your brain saying, I'm going to tell him the truth. Absolutely not. And you just throw the not out there. It's clearly very difficult for Jennifer McCabe to lie. So she has rehearsed her testimony extensively, and we'll be able to see that. But when she gets to a part where she either doesn't remember the rehearsed part or she hasn't rehearsed it, you're going to see very specific deception tags. So absolutely not seems like a deception tag, and we'll see if we continue to see that throughout here. Then we have a sensitivity tag, which is because. It's an explanatory statement. So you told him what to say about the Jeep. Absolutely not. It's because we drove together in the car and I asked, I possibly could have asked. So she tries to lie. She does her best to try and lie directly, and then she immediately has to undo it because it's very hard. It's extremely stressful. And she couldn't help but rephrase that and say, I possibly could have asked. So her body language here is an aggressive head shake, meaning she shakes her head no. She is scolding herself to her mistake. Ms. McCabe is very expressive, so body language, linguistics will be an important part of reading her. We're going to take a look at this video here and put this into context.
You know where the Jeep was because you told him what to say about the Jeep?
Absolutely not. It's because we drove together in the car and I asked, I possibly could have asked.
I put evasion here. Next question. You left out a good part of the driveway, correct? And she says, that could have been his interpretation or an error on his part. So now she's blaming Trooper Proctor. And this happened a lot in a previous statement where I believe it was Higgins that was blaming Trooper Proctor for misrepresenting his words, because they definitely changed their story quite a bit from the time they were first interviewed to being on the stand. You see them saying, my testimony is different because he wrote it down wrong. Do you think he's wrong about what you said? And she says 100%. All right, this is a new deception tag. 100%. Let's see, I 100% said it was straight out the front door. So we have this rehearsed statement again. So we have evasion and a lie. This 100%, we're going to see that again. So let's move along here. Okay, next question, please. And during the course of that conversation, you never once, Ms. McCabe, not once mentioned a several-ton Jeep with a snowplow attached to it, did you? I'm not sure if I did or not. So that reduction in commitment tells us with certainty that she did not. Let's take another look into that. Would that refresh your recollection to see that report? I'll take a look at it. So now she's looking at the report, but we already know that she's going to, if something that she said is going to be incriminating to anyone other than Miss Reed, then she's going to say that it was written down wrong. Okay, and when you said where you remember this vehicle being, you placed it in the exact spot where you're now saying there was a Jeep with a snowplow, correct? Incorrect, which means correct. Then she says, I never placed Miss Reed's car in the spot where Mr. Higgins' vehicle was. So now we have two indicators of a lie. Incorrect and never. Placed Miss Reed's car in the spot where Mr. Higgins' vehicle was. And we already know this. She said that in a prior report. So what this does is this gives further verification that when she uses the word incorrect and she uses the word never, it's a lie. In fact, it's a direct lie. Next question. I will, and you never mentioned, according to that report, that one word about a Jeep, right? I may never have been asked about the Jeep. Okay, so she may never have been asked. That obviously is a lie. Right, because what he asked you was, what did you observe in front of the house, ma'am? That's what he asked, wasn't it? And she says, no. She asks it as a question. So she gets that vocal inflection, which is another indicator of deception here, which tells us that that is a lie. I usually highlight deception tags in blue, but I'm just going to go ahead and highlight that right now. And you said, I observed her car by the mailbox. Yes or no? It's not in the report. I don't recall if he asked me about the Jeep. So she was clearly told to say, I don't recall whenever she is lying. She started to say, I don't remember. And for some reason, she was clearly told, don't say I don't remember, say I don't recall. So now we know that whenever she says I don't recall, that's a lie. Once again, Miss McCabe, that's not what my question was. Do you understand my question? Have you spoken to them about their memory of that night and when they came and left? She gives a 7-second pause here. May, and then she trails off. I'm gonna have to show you this part because the whole totality of her response is deceptive.
Once again, Miss McCabe, that's not what my question was. Do you understand my question? Have you spoken to them about their memory of that night and when they came and left?
They have not shared with me when they got there or when they left.
In the 2 years or 2.5 years,
They have not shared with me when they got there or when they left. She gives a one-sided shoulder shrug, which is an indicator of a lie. They have definitively discussed this with Chris and Julie, and it's very important. So again, I cut out some of the questions so that we're not here all day, but that was what was asked here. Once again, Ms. McCabe, that was not my question. Do you understand my question? Have you spoken to them? When he says them, he means Chris and Julie. Have you spoken to them about their memory of that night and when they came and left? So she has. But not only is this a lie, but this is a very important lie. So this is something that you want to mark down and try and figure out what is the truth here. She is very sensitive about this topic and it's very pertinent. So this is one of those places where we learn that not only is she lying, but this is very important. So there are important lies and there are less important lies. This one is a very important one. And remind me, Chris and Julie Albert are in fact Colin's parents, correct? At some point you become aware that your daughter Allie was involved in this matter too, to some extent, correct? Yes. You know that your phone was extracted. Yes, I handed it over. And you know that your daughter's whereabouts were revealed based on data on that phone, correct? She doesn't do that a whole lot. She doesn't say but she does do that here. That is not how I became aware of my daughter's whereabouts. And the reason you said that is because it's accurate in your experience and it's reliable. Is that right? He's talking about the app that she uses to track her daughter. It's a good tool, but it's not always accurate. So again, she has that contrarian mentality here where she's going to argue every single word. So she doesn't want that app to be used against her. So now any place where she can possibly undermine the credibility of anyone here, she's going to take that opportunity. She says it's a good tool, but it's not always accurate. This means that it is accurate and that it is going to reveal information that is extremely important and detrimental to Ms. McCabe. So what's important for us as interrogators here is not to get hung up on her words. We know clearly that this is deceptive, but we want to ask ourselves, we want to constantly be asking ourselves, why? Why is she being deceptive about this point? And then find the answer to that question. So why is she trying to undermine the accuracy of this app? The accuracy of the app is actually not in question. It's just because her opinion is that it's not accurate, that's not relevant. So this question is a setup, actually. It just helps us to verify that she's trying to undermine this process because there's objective evidence on how accurate the app is that is completely unrelated to Ms. McCabe's opinion. So what this tells us is that she's trying to undermine the app, and that tells us that we need to focus heavily on seeing what information that app brings out, because then she's going to say that's not accurate. She's hiding it. But you said when you testified in front of the grand jury that it's accurate. Okay, so there's a bunch of questions about that, and that's not pertinent because it doesn't matter. Her opinion on this doesn't really matter to us. I mean, that matters in court, but it doesn't matter to us. Correct? You did say that. Yes, okay. That's after a bunch of questions. But so where did Allie go after she supposedly dropped off Cal and Albert? She went nowhere. And so again, there was a bunch of questions, but where did her daughter go after she dropped off Cal and Albert? She stayed with Cal and Albert. So that's pertinent and relevant. And it was clearly deemed before the trial started that this evidence couldn't be used in court. And so he's able simply to mention this, but there's no follow-up on it, which is very interesting for us. We do not want to forget that. I do want to figure out what role Colin, Albert, and Allie played in this. So I haven't looked at their statements yet. I honestly don't even know if they've testified. So I will have to go back and look at that. And after this, the next person I'm going to look up is Colin Albert. Again, I came to this very late in the trial, so I just started analyzing statements. Let's see, she went nowhere. Where was Chloe? Chloe's the dog, I don't know. But you don't remember the dog being there at all? Correct. You never saw that dog? Correct. I have no memory of seeing that dog. Okay, now I know the dog is relevant because the dog ends up attacking John O'Keefe, but I don't know what relevance that has here. You never saw the dog, correct? And she says, I have no memory of seeing that dog. So when she says, I have no memory, she hasn't used that before. So I'm not sure if that is a deception tag or not. We can continue to look for that. Let's see, where was Chloe? I don't know. I don't know is the right way to phrase that. So there's a possibility that this is truthful. So I would want to keep looking for other indicators here. But you don't remember the dog being there at all, correct? Correct. So she wants you to believe that she doesn't know where the dog is. She very well may not, but she also doesn't want you to know. So you never saw the dog, correct? I have no memory of seeing the dog. This is the first indicator that, when she says, I have no memory, you would expect her to say, I don't have any memory of seeing the dog, if that was a truthful statement. And now it's starting to look like a deceptive statement. And remind me once again, when you were leaving that night, that early morning before, who was the last person to leave? Caitlin? I believe she left after us. We talked about this, and I want to get a little bit more detail about it. You indicated that at some point you looked outside and you saw Karen Reed's SUV in front of the house. Safe to say? Correct. All right, let's see if we can narrow that down just a little. So you also indicated that you saw Ryan Nagel's vehicle outside. She says, saw lights. There's no I, and there's no vehicle, car. She says, saw lights. So this is extremely sensitive for her. And we just need to figure out why. Why is Ryan Nagel's vehicle so sensitive for her? Okay, lights belonging to the vehicle, right? Yes, I knew there was another vehicle outside. But again, she's not willing to say that it's Brian Nagel's vehicle. And where was that in relation to Miss Reed's vehicle? It was behind it. I didn't pay much attention to it. Okay, and she's basically trying to say, stop asking me questions. When she says, I wasn't paying attention to it, she's trying to not have to answer questions about it. And where was the Jeep in relation to Ryan Nagel's vehicle and Karen Reed's SUV? I remember seeing Karen Reed's SUV straight for some reason. She loves that. Not for some reason, she rehearsed that. And then I saw the lights of Ryan Nagel. Not even, she makes it sound like he has lights on his body. I saw the lights of Ryan Nagel. I did not pay attention to where it was. Okay, so this is uncontracted. I did not. She doesn't say I didn't pay attention. So this is deceptive. Actually, let me highlight this in blue here. So she did pay attention to where it was. I was just looking at Miss Reed's vehicle. So was Ryan Nagel's vehicle and those lights that you remember being in front of the Jeep or from behind? I'm not certain. She specifically says, I am not certain. This is, again, is uncontracted. Haven't you testified previously that you remember the Jeep being between Ryan Nagel's vehicle and the SUV? 10-second pause here as she's trying to remember what she rehearsed. It's painful to watch that. 10 seconds is a long time to sit there in silence. And then she says, I'm not certain where Ryan Nagel's vehicle was. She says, I am not certain. So after that long 10-second pause, she says, I am not certain where Ryan Nagel's vehicle was. So she either can't remember what she rehearsed or that is what she rehearsed. But either way, that's pretty painful.
Haven't you testified previously that you remember the Jeep being between Ryan Nagel's vehicle and the SUV?
I am not certain where Ryan Nagel's vehicle was.
And this is definitely deception. This is definitely a lie. She always uncontracts words when she lies. Okay, definitely was not in front of the Jeep. No. So it was definitely behind the Jeep. And then she says behind or to the side. I'm not sure. If it's not rehearsed, she just simply can't say a coherent, deceptive statement or a coherent lie. Everything that she says that's not rehearsed just comes out as babble. And that's good for us, but it's painful to watch because it's just very painful to watch. And so, but she's very good at memorizing her rehearsed lines. We'll give her credit for that. So it was definitely behind the Jeep, behind or to the side, I'm not sure. Okay, well, if it's parked on the street in front of the house, it's not going to be beside the Jeep, right? That's going to be in the middle of the road. And she says, as it would have been in the middle of the road, correct. So if it's pulled over, it's behind the Jeep. She just literally has nothing else that she can say there. Did you see any tire tracks? At one point, yes. Okay, she doesn't say whose they were. When was that point? I'm not sure. So all she's told us so far is that she saw tire tracks at some point in her life, and she doesn't know whose they were. Was it before Miss Reed's vehicle got there? Was it after? I believe it was after. There's no commitment to this statement. I believe it was after Miss Reed's vehicle was there, because now she's making this a sensitive statement. That's why I was drawn to look outside. Have you ever had a conversation with Mr. Higgins about anything having to do with this case? I do not believe so. So yes, she has. She uncontracted and she reduced the commitment. This is doubly sensitive here. It means not only did she talk to him about the case, but there was actually some very important information that they discussed, because there's two indicators. You ever ask anybody to make sure you mention a Jeep being parked behind Miss Reed's SUV in this trial? Not that I recall. Again, that is a direct lie. Remember, she said she started to say I don't remember, and then she said I don't recall. So the I don't recall, or not that I can recall, that is an indicator that she does know. After you arrived and you noticed this SUV outside, you started paying somewhat close attention to it, did you not? I went to the front door and looked out the window at the vehicle, yes. As a matter of fact, you texted as soon as you saw the vehicle that 12:27 here, correct? Correct. And then a few minutes later, 12:31, correct? Correct. And then he just runs through all the times that she texted. Now they're talking about how many times she texted. I'm not sure if I did 5 times. Okay, they have the statement. They know, they have her phone records. They know that she did. She's just not willing to say anything definitive about it. It only moved, okay, once so far. So now he's asking how many times the car moved. So the first time I saw it, it was here, and I said here. And then the next time I texted, I said, pull behind me. So that was 1 time, 2 times. And he says, okay, keep going. From one place to the flagpole to further up. Under her voice, she is rehearsing the testimony. So while I would not have marked this if she didn't do that, I'm going to play this for you because this is really, really telling about the way that she rehearses the testimony and the way that she recalls it.
Keep going. You said you saw it pull up again, a second time. You said you saw it move twice.
From one place to the flagpole to further up.
Right, so that's 3 times that you're up to the door.
Okay.
Is that yes?
I'm telling you, my memory is twice to the door.
Mr. McCabe, it's not a trick question. You just testified that you saw the car move twice. By definition, that has to be you looked at it 3 times. Stationary, move once, move twice.
Maybe I used the wrong wording.
Maybe.
For me, this is very painful to watch because it's so obvious. I almost feel embarrassed for her. That's 3 times. Okay. Yes, I'm telling you, my memory is twice to the door. So basically all she's saying is that everything that's in the records is true. She's non-committal on everything when she's trying to disagree with the records of how many times she texted and how many times she looked at the vehicle specifically. So Miss McCabe, that's not a trick question. So there's 3 times that you're up to the door. Okay. Yes, I'm telling you my memory is twice to the door. Miss McCabe, that's not a trick question. You just testified that you saw the car moved twice. By definition, that has to be you looked at it 3 times. Stationary, moved once, or moved twice. Maybe I used the wrong wording. This is a reflection on her rehearsed testimony. The point that I want to make here is you have to pay attention to what the subject is really saying, what they're actually saying. Because while it seems like it could be in context here, what she's doing is reflecting back. She's saying, maybe I said it wrong, is what she's trying to imply. But literally what she's saying is I used the wrong wording. She's saying that based on her rehearsed testimony, she may have phrased that incorrectly based on what was rehearsed. And then after that last time, which would be 5 times, 5 texts, 5 looks after the last time you texted, you got back, which would have been the 6th time, and the SUV was gone. My husband and I were both getting up and looking. And he says, the answer is correct. Yes. Okay. So what they're doing is they're establishing here that she was paying extremely close attention, texting at multiple times, not multiple, 5 times to the SUV while it was sitting there for about 15 minutes. And every single time that she texted, she got up and looked at the SUV. She saw every time it moved. She saw every everything that it did until it was gone. And she's trying to be extremely non-committal and very confused and confusing about how much she saw the SUV every couple of minutes until it was gone. Well, straight outside until it looked, and she says, she cuts him off, to the front door of the front door is where it was. It's okay. Straight outside until it moved according to yes. And then it moved, correct. And then moved the second time, correct. It moved to the flagpole and then it moved up again. Right. Then they're talking about how well did she see the front lawn afterwards? Did she see a body laying in the lawn? So I have a question, Miss McCabe, where was the body? I have no idea. I'm assuming the body was on the front lawn. She actually, that's a truthful statement. She actually has no idea where the body was. Then she says, I'm assuming it was on the front lawn, which means nothing. When you say I assume, it's just a feeling. The problem with that is that you were looking at the front lawn. I was looking at the vehicle and where it had moved. So that's an evasive answer. She's not willing to say that she could see the lawn. And it actually gets very comedic in the next few questions here. So you had a clear and good, your words, not mine, a clear and good view of the SUV. Yes. And everything in front of it. I never said everything in front of it. Again, never, she's lying. Obviously, she's lying. I never said everything in front of it. I saw the SUV, it's black. It has lights on. And as it moved, I could see it with its lights. Like I said, once she gets into non-rehearsed testimony, this becomes just a garble of words, but we know that that's a lie. You had a clear view of everything between you and the SUV. All the things closer to you and the SUV. You had a clear view of everything between you and the SUV. All the things closer to you than the SUV. And she says, I wouldn't say that. She doesn't say that's not true. She says, I wouldn't say that. So your view was obstructed on what was between you and the SUV, but not obstructed on the SUV. That's not what I was saying, which is true. She wasn't saying, no, of course not, because if you have a clear field of view to the SUV, you can see everything in front of you as well, meaning between you and the SUV as well. She says, if I'm looking straight out at the SUV, I'm not looking down at the ground.
You could see everything in front of it as well, meaning between you and the SUV as well.
If I'm looking straight out at an SUV, I'm not looking down at the ground.
And then on the stand, she looks at her shoes, not looking down at the ground. I literally have little kids that do that. I'll tell them to go, if they say they can't find something, they can't find their shoes, I'll tell them go look for their shoes. And they do this like they're looking around for their shoes. She does basically the same thing on the stand. Can you clearly see that there's nothing between you and me except the podium? She says, yes, well, there's a table, trying to say that you are wrong about everything you say. So again, she's a contrarian and she is trying to just disagree with everything that he says. It's a very childish way of trying to reduce his credibility in the accusations. There was no body, was there? And now she says, I never saw a body. So that means that she did see the body. She just didn't see it on the lawn, but she did see it. Now, I told you there was something that she says in here that's truthful and meaningful and impactful. And it's right here. Let me say that I do like Attorney Jackson. I do like the way he asks questions. I like his tenacious way of not just letting things go. But he missed this. She said, I never saw a body. And then he says, thank you. And then she says, I wish I had. He follows up with, sounds like that's a little rehearsed. And she says, not at all. It's not at all. And the one time that he calls her out on rehearsed testimony, this actually isn't it. This is true. She says, I wish I had. So this statement is the most truthful thing that she states in this entire testimony. This is a confession that Karen Reed is not guilty. Here's why. Jennifer McCabe did see the body, but didn't see it on the front lawn. This is a sorrowful reflection and her wishing that she had seen the body on the lawn because that would mean that her family wouldn't have killed John O'Keefe. Her emotional state, her tone of voice, the actual words, literally everything about this statement coalesces right here. It's like all of the pain that she has trying to lie and cover for everybody just sort of leaked out right here. And then she says, not at all. It's not at all. This statement is contracted. It's in the correct tense. It uses I. You can hear the pain in her vocal inflection. This is a completely truthful statement. So let's just look at this one more time. He says, there's no body, was there? And she says, I never saw a body. What she just did is she's trying to say that she never saw a body, but the word never means that she saw the body, which means that she's now remembering seeing John O'Keefe dead. And that strikes right to her core. And right after she says that, she says, I wish I had. And she means, I wish I had seen him on the lawn. Because if she had seen him on the lawn, then it wouldn't have been the Albert family and Higgins who murdered John O'Keefe. And she wouldn't be in the middle of all of this. And then he says, that sounds a little rehearsed. And she says, not at all. It's not at all. That is just a sorrowful reflection on her state of that at that moment. So that for me is basically the end of the statement for me. I've heard everything I need, but we're going to just keep going through this because there's a lot of detail that you get from her lies.
After that SUV was gone, and you looked out that window with that clear and good view, there was no body, was there?
I never saw a body.
Thank you.
I wish I had.
Sounds like that's a little rehearsed.
Not at all. It's not at all.